Pam Bondi just found herself at the center of a storm that could shake the Department of Justice to its core. In a tense congressional hearing, Senator Chris Van Hollen confronted the Attorney General with a whistleblower complaint so disturbing it left the room stunned. At the heart of it all is a veteran DOJ attorney, a man with 15 years of service and commendations who says he was fired for one simple reason: he refused to lie. His words were chilling: "I didn't sign up to lie." And when those words echoed across the hearing room, all eyes turned to Bondi. Instead of clarity, her response only raised more questions.
Truths to courts of law. And second, if that's not the case, what did you mean by saying he was not a zealous advocate?
Senator Van Hollen, this is all pending litigation, as you're well aware, and the timing of it, I can't discuss pending litigation. This is a whistleblower lawsuit pending within my office, but I will say the timing of it I find suspect, as he takes hits at Pam Bondi, who is one of the best human beings I know, one of the smartest, brilliant men I know, who will soon become a federal judge. And his hearing happens to be today, and I find the irony of the timing of it pretty remarkable, the lawsuit. But this had to do with attorney-client privilege information that was disclosed. I can't talk about the substance, but what I will tell you, and you have obviously my word, any zealous advocacy means to be done ethically and honestly, always. And that's what I mean by zealous advocacy. He also accused Pam Bondi of things that Todd Blanche, who is one of the best human beings I also know, my Deputy Attorney General, was in the room and said did not happen. But again, I wish I could get into greater detail. I can't because it's pending. But I stand by Pam Bondi and I stand by Todd Blanche every day, and I always will.
Well, Madam Attorney General, I will say that his account seems to have lots of information. So as you say, this will obviously be something that's litigated or reviewed through due process procedures. But I have to say that it's very, very disturbing. We've also heard from others in other departments who are responsible for implementing the laws of the United States that they feel uncomfortable about having been asked to do things that they thought were unethical. Let me go on to some of the budget questions, and I really want to follow up on my colleagues, Senator Moran and Senator Collins. But the DOJ grant funding is being sort of cut back on two fronts. One, in April, the department terminated hundreds of grant awards, notifying grantees that their current grant funds were gone, effective immediately. That included, law enforcement training grants, technical assistance awards, some dating back to fiscal year, I think, 2017. So question number one is, are you going to be releasing those funds? The second concern regarding grants has to do with the monies that were appropriated in this fiscal year, in March. And my understanding is that DOJ is withholding an overwhelming number of notices of funding opportunities, NOFOs, meaning that grantees who rely on these grants, including many who provide services to victims of crimes, are literally, in some cases, running out of money. For example, the department's biggest grant-making component, the Office of Justice Programs, has only posted one notice for fiscal year 25, NOFO notice. So if you could answer the question with respect to both those pieces.
Sure, and that's a very valid question, Senator. The notices will be going out in coming weeks about the grants. And we did cut grants by 6%, and I'm here to tell every senator, if we did cut a grant that you care about that is specific to your state, please contact me. I've turned on grants that were cut off. So please, if that happens, there's an appeal process, but you can pick up the phone and you can call me, and I would be more than happy to look at that. I never want to take away a grant that is actually helping Americans, helping victims, helping law enforcement, and we're looking at it on a case-by-case basis, and many of those are being appealed already, but you have my word, we will look at all of those, absolutely.
Thank you. And in terms of the other piece of the question, when the notices for information will go out, because the fiscal year obviously is, running out, and we are hearing from lots of entities that are waiting for those notices so they can apply for the grant funding.
Yeah, yes, Senator. The notice of funding is consistent with our priorities, and they're finalizing it right now. It will be going out very shortly.
Very shortly. All right. Thank you.
It'll be posted on a rolling basis, too, I believe.
Okay. If you could just keep us posted on that. And I would appreciate it, Madam Attorney General, if you could have your team or respond to a letter that about 30 senators wrote to you on this topic of the prior fiscal year funds that were frozen.
Was this about protecting truth or protecting her allies? Bondi dodged, deflected, and pointed to pending litigation, but the bigger issue was impossible to ignore: what happens when America's top law enforcement agency punishes those who stand up for honesty. This wasn't just another political sparring match. It was a direct test of integrity, accountability, and whether justice itself can survive when truth becomes optional. The name at the center of this storm is R.Z. Ruvini, a career attorney who spent more than 15 years inside the Department of Justice. By every measure, he wasn't just another government lawyer, he was trusted, commended, and respected. During his service, he earned recognition from senior officials, including during the first Trump administration, for his dedication and skill. But in his recent testimony, Ruvini revealed something far darker than routine office politics. According to his whistleblower complaint, everything unraveled when he refused to sign a legal brief. On the surface, it seemed like just another document. But Ruvini says the brief was unsupported by facts and had no legal foundation. Signing it would have meant putting his name and the credibility of the Justice Department behind something he believed was fundamentally false. He drew the line. His words were blunt. "I didn't sign up to lie." That refusal, he claims, cost him his career. Terminated after years of service, Ruvini insists his punishment wasn't for incompetence or misconduct, it was for protecting the truth. If true, this isn't just a personal tragedy. It's a warning sign about what happens when integrity collides with political pressure inside America's most powerful law enforcement agency. When Senator Chris Van Hollen confronted Pam Bondi with Ruvini's allegations, he didn't mince words. He quoted Bondi herself, reminding her of a statement she'd made on national television: "Any DOJ attorney who doesn't zealously advocate will face consequences." Then came the question that cut to the heart of the matter: does zealous advocacy now mean bending the truth in court? Bondi's response was as cautious as it was evasive. She immediately fell back on legal shields, insisting she couldn't comment because the case was pending litigation. She deflected further, questioning the timing of the whistleblower's complaint, suggesting it was no coincidence that it surfaced on the same day her close ally Amal Bowie was facing a judicial nomination hearing. Rather than directly addressing why a 15-year veteran might risk everything to expose misconduct, Bondi doubled down on defending her associates. She praised Bowie as one of the smartest, most brilliant men I know and dismissed Ruvini's claims as unfounded attacks. But the senator's question still hung in the air unanswered. If honesty is punished, what does zealous advocacy really mean? For many watching, Bondi's silence spoke louder than her words. Pam Bondi's defense didn't stop with vague legal talk. Instead, she turned the spotlight toward two men close to her inner circle, Amal Bowie and Todd Blanche. Ruvini's complaint mentioned both, and Bondi wasted no time making her loyalty crystal clear. She praised Amal Bowie, describing him as one of the smartest, most brilliant men I know. Conveniently, Bowie was facing a Senate hearing the very same day for his nomination to become a federal judge. Bondi framed the whistleblower's timing as suspicious, almost as if the entire complaint was designed to smear her ally at the worst possible moment. Then came Todd Blanche, Bondi's deputy attorney general and another figure she fiercely defended. She insisted that Blanche was in the room during the alleged misconduct and flatly rejected Ruvini's account. Her words painted a picture of an attorney general more eager to shield her friends than to address the core issue: why would a veteran lawyer fabricate such a serious charge? To many watching, it felt less like transparency and more like damage control. And as Bondi leaned harder into defending her circle, the bigger question grew louder: was justice being sacrificed to protect power? Just when the hearing seemed explosive enough, Senator Van Hollen pivoted to an issue that hits communities far beyond Washington: Department of Justice grants. These funds are lifelines supporting law enforcement training, crime victim services, and community safety programs. Yet under Bondi's leadership, hundreds of grants were suddenly cut. Some had been awarded years earlier, dating back to 2017, and organizations relying on them were blindsided. Van Hollen pressed Bondi: why/programs that protect victims and strengthen public safety? Why choke off resources that communities desperately need at a time when crime and security are already top concerns? Bondi admitted the DOJ had implemented a 6% cut, framing it as part of broader budget priorities. She insisted there was an appeals process, even inviting senators to personally call her if grants in their states had been affected. But her explanation did little to ease concerns. For nonprofits already running out of funds, and for victims depending on services that suddenly vanished, appeals meant little. The moment revealed something bigger. While Bondi defended her allies in Washington, people on the ground, victims, police, and communities were left to pay the price. When pressed further on the funding crisis, Pam Bondi tried to calm the outrage with promises. She insisted the notices for new grant opportunities were being finalized and would be posted very shortly. But her answers only highlighted the delay. Months into the fiscal year, community organizations had received virtually nothing, leaving them in limbo. Victim advocacy groups reported running out of money. Law enforcement agencies complained that training programs had been halted. For many, very shortly sounded like too little too late. Bondi framed the cuts as consistent with DOJ priorities and suggested the process was rolling forward. But that raised another troubling question: what priorities would justify starving victim services or law enforcement resources? Her reassurances felt hollow against the reality that shelters, training centers, and safety programs were already closing their doors. Even worse, the lack of transparency left senators frustrated. 30 of them had written to Bondi demanding answers about the frozen funds, but many said their letters went unanswered. To them, the DOJ under Bondi wasn't just slow, it was unresponsive. And that silence left the impression of an agency that viewed accountability as optional. Taken together, the whistleblower's firing and the DOJ's grant cuts painted a deeply unsettling picture. On one hand, you had a veteran attorney punished for refusing to sign a document he believed was false. On the other, you had entire communities left scrambling as vital safety programs lost funding without explanation. Both pointed to the same problem: an institution where loyalty and political maneuvering seemed to matter more than truth or justice. If Ruvini's account is true, it signals a culture inside the DOJ where integrity is treated as disobedience. If grants meant to support crime victims are slashed without warning, it signals leadership that prioritizes power over people. And if senators can't even get straight answers from the Attorney General, what does that say about accountability at the highest levels of law enforcement? This wasn't just a clash between a whistleblower and his boss. It was a glimpse into what happens when the guardians of justice bend the system to protect themselves. The risk is enormous, public trust erodes, victims are abandoned, and the very idea of blind justice starts to collapse. For millions of Americans, that's not politics, it's survival. At the end of the hearing, one thing was clear: this wasn't just about a whistleblower or a budget fight, it was about the very foundation of justice in America. If a DOJ attorney with 15 years of service can be fired for refusing to put his name on a false legal brief, what message does that send to every other lawyer inside the system? If victim services and law enforcement training can be cut off overnight, what does that mean for communities already struggling to stay safe? Pam Bondi's answers left more questions than clarity. Her fierce defense of her allies, her dismissive framing of Ruvini's timing, and her vague promises about funding painted a portrait of leadership more concerned with appearances than accountability. and that should worry all of us. Because when truth-tellers are punished and public safety takes a back seat, it's not just politics, it's democracy itself at risk. So let me leave you with this: should refusing to lie in court ever cost someone their career? Drop your thoughts in the comments, share this video to spark the debate, and don't forget to subscribe. Together we'll keep exposing the stories that those in power hope you'll ignore.